Welcome to the Risk Management Training Session. Presentation Outline. Training Objectives. Related Standards. Definitions. Risk Management Procedure. Workshop, Practical Exam. Training Evaluation. Training Objectives. Enhance employees' skills in the risk management process. Update risk registers across all departments through active participation of all employees. Related ISO standards. ISO 31000, Risk Management, Guidelines. ISO 9001, Quality Management Systems. ISO 45001, Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. ISO 14001, Environmental Management Systems. Definitions. Hazard is any source of potential damage, harm or adverse health effects on something or someone. Risk is the combination of the likelihood of a hazardous occurrence and consequences. Environmental aspect is any element of an organization's activities, products, or services that can interact with the environment. Environmental impact is any change to the environment, positive or negative, that results from an environmental aspect. Opportunity, a positive risk that can lead to beneficial outcomes. Risk Management Procedure. Risk Assessment, Hazard Identification. The process of recognizing sources of potential harm or situations with the potential to cause injury, illness, damage, or environmental harm. Focus, what can go wrong? Example, identifying that a rotating machine part is unguarded. Common methods for identifying hazards include workplace inspections, job safety analysis, incident investigations, employee feedback, SDS, etc. Types of hazards. Physical. Examples: noise, vibration, heat, dust. Chemical. Examples: emissions, fuel vapors, solvents. Biological. Examples: contaminated water, pests. Ergonomic. Examples: repetitive tasks, poor posture. Psychosocial. Examples: shift work, lone working. Environmental. Examples: spills, air/water pollution, land degradation. Risk assessment, risk analysis. What it is, understanding the nature of the risk, including the likelihood of the hazard causing harm, the severity of the potential consequences. Focus, how bad is it and how likely is it to happen. Risk matrix, visual representation of risk levels based on likelihood and severity. A risk matrix is a visual tool used in risk management to evaluate and prioritize risks based on their likelihood of occurrence and severity of impact. It typically consists of a grid with one axis representing the probability of a risk event, e.g., rare to almost certain, and the other representing the consequences, e.g., minor to catastrophic. By plotting risks on this matrix, organizations can quickly identify which risks require immediate attention, which can be monitored, and which are acceptable. The matrix helps in making informed decisions about risk mitigation strategies and resource allocation, promoting a proactive approach to workplace safety and operational efficiency. Risk assessment, risk evaluation. What it is, comparing the results of the risk analysis with risk criteria, e.g., legal limits, company policy, to determine whether the risk is acceptable or needs treatment. Focus, is the risk acceptable or not? High risk. Unacceptable high. Activity should be modified to include remedial planning and action and be subjected to detailed HSE assessment. Medium. Acceptable but must be managed ALARP. Activity can operate subject to management and / or modification. Low risk. Acceptable without required further action. No action required unless escalation of the risk is possible. Examples for the difference between the hazard and the risk. Example 1. In a distribution company's warehouse, visible cracks have appeared in the ceiling, and with rain expected soon, this presents a clear risk that must be evaluated. The warehouse stores various items, including televisions, TVs, plastic chairs, and tables. The risk to the TVs is significantly higher because they are electronic devices that can be severely damaged by water, leading to costly losses and potential electrical hazards. In contrast, the plastic chairs and tables carry a lower risk, as they are more resistant to water and less likely to suffer immediate damage. This example highlights the importance of assessing both the likelihood of an incident, e.g., water leakage through ceiling cracks, and the severity of its impact on different types of inventory. Proper risk management would prioritize protective measures for high-risk items like TVs, such as relocating them or covering them with waterproof materials. Example 2. For a hazard to cause harm, a hazardous event must happen. The likelihood is the chance that hazardous event will occur. Consequence is the outcome of the hazardous event. Risk is the combination of the likelihood of a hazardous event occurring and the consequence of the event. Risk control, or risk treatment. What it is: the process of selecting and implementing measures to eliminate or reduce risks to an acceptable level. Focus: what are we going to do about it? Risk control, or risk treatment, strategies. Avoidance: eliminate the risk. Reduction: mitigate the likelihood or impact. Sharing: transfer the risk. Retention: accept the risk with monitoring. The hierarchy of controls is a system used in occupational health and safety to minimize or eliminate exposure to hazards. It ranks control methods from most effective to least effective. Elimination: physically remove the hazard. Example: remove a dangerous machine from the workplace. Substitution: replace the hazard with a safer alternative. Example: use a less toxic chemical in place of a hazardous one. Engineering controls: isolate people from the hazard. Example: install ventilation systems or machine guards. Administrative controls: change the way people work. Example: implement safety training, shift rotations, or warning signs. Personal protective equipment, PPE, protect the worker with gear. Example: use gloves, helmets, goggles, or respirators. This hierarchy helps prioritize risk control strategies, aiming to address hazards at their source before relying on individual behavior or protective equipment. Identify the hazards. Identify the hazards. Identify the hazards. Risk management. Example 4, cabinet makers. In a cabinet maker's factory, one of the primary hazards is the rotating wood-cutting disc, commonly known as a table saw. Without any protective measures, the risk of severe injury such as cuts or amputations is high, due to direct exposure to the fast-spinning blade. However, after installing a new adjustable protection guard, the risk is significantly reduced, the likelihood will be reduced, not the severity. This is an example of an engineering control, which isolates the worker from the hazard while still allowing the task to be performed. Another hazard involves the use of hazardous paint that emits toxic fumes. Initially, the risk to workers' health is moderate to high, especially with prolonged exposure. By substituting the hazardous paint with a safer, low VOC alternative, the risk is reduced. This is a substitution control, which is more effective than relying on PPE alone. The company implemented an engineering control by installing an automated painting system inside a closed room with clear glass walls. The worker now operates the system using an external control device, significantly reducing direct exposure during the painting process. However, the worker is still required to enter the room to replace wooden plates, which means some exposure to paint fumes remains. While this setup greatly reduces the risk compared to manual painting, it does not eliminate it entirely. Additional controls, such as ventilation systems, time limits inside the room, or PPE, may be needed to further reduce residual risk. This example shows how combining engineering, administrative, and PPE controls can work together to manage risk when full elimination or substitution is not possible. Elimination. The most effective method of risk control is completely eliminate the hazard. Reduce. If the hazard cannot be eliminated, attempt to reduce its potential to cause harm. Separating. Next, prevent people from coming into contact with hazards by separating them from each other. Enclosing. Enclosing the hazard behind a barrier is also an effective way of separating hazards from people. Administration. A safe system of work details how activities should be carried out to minimize risk. PPE. Personal protective equipment is the last line of defense, since it's entirely reliant on each employee remembering to wear it. Risks must be reduced so far as is reasonably practicable. Recording and reporting. All hazards and risk assessment shall be recorded and maintained as documented information. Monitoring and follow-up. Regular monitoring and reviewing ensure the effectiveness of control measures. Key activities include periodic inspections, regular checks to ensure compliance with safety standards. Audits, comprehensive evaluations of safety practices and procedures. Incident reporting and investigation, documenting and analyzing accidents and near misses. Employee training and feedback, continuous education and input from workers on safety issues. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact the HSE department at any time. Exam and evaluation. Find the exam and evaluation links in the video description. Thank you.